Welcome to Weight Loss with Plants, brought to you by the T. Colin Campbell Center for Nutrition Studies. I'm your host, Sharme Ridley. Our next guests have lost at least 290 pounds between the two of them. Many of you know them through Tim's blog and YouTube channel, Fat Man Rants. Their stories will certainly inspire. Please welcome Tim and Heather Kaufman. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having us today.
Yeah, Sharme, it's great to meet you, and thank you again for having us.
Hey, let's start by telling everyone exactly how much each of you have lost. Heather, start with you.
I've lost about 90 pounds over, I don't know how many years it's been now. It's kind of a process. I dropped some, and then I had started changing some different things, and I had ended up dropping some more. So I'm, all whole food, plant-based, no oil, no salt, sugar. So it's been 6 years now.
And what about you, Tim?
So I've lost over 200, but I always like to talk about what I've gained because that's so much more important. So, and I know this is a weight loss thing, but the weight loss is great. The weight loss, I gained a lot of health by losing weight. And the weight, a lot of people don't associate the physical weight with the emotional weight that comes along with being heavy. Everything is harder in life. And you just don't feel good about yourself sometimes. So yeah, I guess together we've lost 290 pounds. I started my journey a little bit before hers. And so I think I was plant-based about 2 years prior to you?
Actually 3.
3 years.
Yes.
Yeah, and most of my weight came off right away. And it's fluctuated a little bit depending on activity levels. So, yeah.
Now Tim, you've had a lot of chronic issues. You were even immobile for a while. Tell us about how it was then and compared to how it is now.
So I wish you would have asked me that about a year ago. So as a young person, probably in my late teens, I started developing some arthritis and some, horrific joint pain and joint dislocations. And I was diagnosed with a disease called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a connective tissue disorder. And basically my joints are very loose and they slip a lot. When I was younger, it didn't bother me as much, but as I got older, my joints got worse and worse. And then I started doing less and less and started eating more. And then so basically this chronic condition wasn't too bad in the beginning, but it escalated into a very painful deterioration of joints. And so in time, when everything's kind of smashing together, it takes chips out. Last year, my ankle was so bad, there were like crumbles of bone actually trying to get out of the skin because the bones are so destroyed. So I was on a lot of medicine when I was younger, a lot of anti-inflammatories, heavy-duty anti-inflammatories like indomethacin. I got into painkillers from there, and that escalated, almost killed me from, painkillers and opioids. And then I ended up on fentanyl and I started drinking. I was in severe pain. And so, adopting the whole food plant-based lifestyle certainly helped. Inflammation disappeared. A lot of my arthritis visibly went away, but unfortunately, the damage that's, it's just from a chronic condition that's genetic. I'm very much more mobile than I used to be, and the weight had a lot to do with that as well. I do well, but I obviously I can't get rid of that Ehlers-Danlos. The symptoms have subsided substantially, other than I've had 3 pretty major surgeries back to back here in the past year. But overall, for an Ehlers-Danlos patient, my doctor, his prognosis was by the time I was 25, I would be in a wheelchair and on disability when I was a teenager. So I'm doing remarkably well. I was able to walk 2 miles this morning, even after all these surgeries. So I'm very grateful.
Well, tell us about your weight loss journey.
So the weight loss journey started more as a health issue than weight loss. I mean, it all kind of was bundled together there, but the super short part, like to take my entire life and just condense it into a couple minutes. Um, as I became less active, like I said before, my doctor said I needed to find a new career. I did manual labor my whole life. I found a new career in teaching, which we thought would be much better on my joints, but as kind of an unintended consequence, being less active, my body started seizing up. And the less I did, and the more weight I'd put on. And then I went to food for comfort, to be honest. Food was a very good drug for me. It made me feel good. The painkillers, the alcohol, and the food all had the same effect on me. Like it was my escape. And, it's weird that we think we find these escapes with food and something that's very easy to get. But the escape that we're trying to get ends up creating a very bad, hellish prison for us. And before we know it, we're in so deep, it's hard to get out. So with all the medicines and all the fast foods and all the lack of activity, I found myself over 400 pounds and I couldn't move real well. It was a big deal for me to get into my pickup truck just to get to work. I was still functioning. I was a functioning addict and a functioning 400 pounder, but I wasn't functioning very well. I did basically the minimum I could do to get my day done and come back home and crash. And I'll keep going if you want. I'm trying to make this quick.
Right. Well, Heather, tell us how you're witnessing this. Share with us your experience with it.
So from where he was at
Yeah.
400 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
So it was hard. It wasn't easy. I had 2 young kids, and I had to take care of them, plus take care of Tim. There was a lot of times I'd have to put his socks and shoes on for him, which, I mean, I did that, it's what you do. You take care of each other and, taking care of the kids. What days weren't always easy. I'd be bringing groceries in and he'd be, we lived upstairs. So, by the time he got upstairs, he'd be tired. So I'd end up, bringing groceries up and, we weren't very, our life consisted of just sitting down watching television, at the end of the night. Weren't very active at all. Our big thing was renting movies at the time.
From Blockbuster.
And yeah, and not really going places and doing things other
Right.
than, with the kids. And, if the kids had a game, I would be the one to take the kids to the games.
And now, do you have conversations? Do you have conversations now about how things were back then? And are there things that happen every day that you realize the changes are just phenomenal?
Well, it's today it's nice. Tim, we started doing a lot of activities together as Tim got better, as he lost weight, as I lost weight. We started doing a lot of things together and, whether running, walking, hiking. And Tim got sidelined just this past year with the surgeries. And, I'd go out and do my thing and I'd kind of be sad because I didn't have him with me. And now that he's back able to be out walking again, it's great.
It's actually an interesting question. And I don't want to come across the wrong way, but I like to think of myself as like gratitude was a huge, but gratitude actually came into my life before plans. And I always say, gratitude showed me that I had a reason to live, and gratitude showed me how selfish I was being for just being this self-destructive person and not even trying, which we can talk about in a minute. But what's interesting is, as grateful as I think I am, you kind of hit on something there that over the past almost decade, we don't talk about it. We don't. I think because our new life is so normal now, Like, and even now, sometimes you look at a picture and like, I don't remember being that big. Like, I don't remember you being that big.
Right.
And so that's kind of an interesting concept that I don't like to live in the past. They say that's why the rear view mirror is smaller than the windshield. But I think it is important to be grateful from, you know, where you came from. And we forget, you know, I forget what it's like to take breaks going upstairs because I'm winded. I get angry because I can't go run 20 miles right now. And, you know, a big deal for me was getting out of a chair. So we you know, that's our bad for not like really spending some time once in a while to think back about what life was, because we have been blessed so much. There's no doubt in my mind I would have been dead. There's 100%. I would not have made it through another year the way I was going. So.
And I think sometimes that's why we don't, you know, go back and think about the past, because
it's dark.
Our future's so much better now.
Yeah.
You know, we have so many more things to be thankful for and grateful for that you don't want to dwell on the bad.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Right. And you mentioned the word gratitude, and it reminds me of a story that I heard you tell concerning your mother-in-law and then your dad. Tell us that story.
Yeah, so I haven't told this story in a while because I haven't been doing interviews anymore. So I hope I don't start bawling. But so, you know, life was busy. We just had kids. We were a young family starting out. And then life just kept getting busier as the kids got older, you know, games here, games there, and practices. And Heather's mom was a very big part of our life. She was always there babysitting, and she was just an amazing lady. And she had kind of like a cough cold thing that just was like lingering, wouldn't go away. So we finally convinced her to go get checked out. And it seemed like a switch flipped that day because she was diagnosed with leukemia, which was a huge blow for us. We were totally unfamiliar with all this, unfamiliar with how this all worked. And it seems like everyone had to make decisions overnight. And then we were immersed into this world of cancer that we never knew. And it was rough. It was super rough. As Heather's best friend in the whole world. And to see her terminal, it was hard to take. But where the gratitude came from was actually from her, because there were days I would go visit her and she was so sick and so tired and just waiting on transfusions. And every time I would go into her room, she was worried how I was feeling that day or what was hurting on me. And the one day I walked out of the hospital, you know, the first thing she said to me was, "How's your knee?" And I remember that day walking out to the hospital and thinking, you know, how I've spent my whole life like wishing I had this and wanting this and can't believe I'm in this situation. But I realized that just behind me that a lot of these people in the cancer hospital would never come home. And you know, her mom was in the pediatric ward for some experimental medicine. And so you see all these kids, and it's like my whole life I'd complained, and I started realizing that I did have things to be thankful for. And instead of complaining about my knees, how they hurt all the time, I should start being thankful that I have legs, because there's a lot of people in that cancer hospital that would have switched places with me instantly. So I think that's where gratitude really came in. And I'll kind of fast forward while we're dealing with all the things that go on with a cancer patient. My father had a little cough, and same thing, wouldn't go away. He went to get checked to see if he had pneumonia, and he was loaded with stage 4 kidney cancer that had metastasized to his whole body. And the doctor gave him 6 months to live. And my father passed away 6 weeks from his diagnosis. So my dad was my best friend in the whole world. And
I'm so sorry.
yeah,
And that's a lot that the both of you had to deal with all at one time, in addition to your health. So those things help to propel you toward where you are now, correct?
100%. Yeah. And so, as her poor mom wanted to come to the funeral so bad for my dad, and she was too
Yeah.
sick, and not too long after that, her mom lost her battle to leukemia that turned into lymphoma and eventually a brain tumor. And
Where did you first learn about plant-based eating? What sent you in that direction?
yeah, so what really sent me there was I knew that after burying our two favorite people in the world, I was next. I knew I honestly, like, I don't know if I really cared one way or another, but I had watched Heather go through the funeral arrangements and all the, newspaper obituary and all this stuff. And I'm like, she's going to have to do this next. Like I was getting to the point where my kidneys were shutting down. My heart was pounding so hard that I would set the remote for the TV on my chest and it would actually be jumping off my chest. I was really sick and I knew that it wasn't going to be long before she was doing all these arrangements for my funeral. So I really, honestly, what I was trying to do is just find a way to give her a break so we could kind of get back to normal. And I was trying not to die. And I thought the way to go about this was bariatric surgery. I did a little research. I found a guy on YouTube that, was in bad a shape as I was, and he got the surgery. And a year later, he looks like a new person and he's happy. So I went to my doctor. Well, before I went to the doctor, I actually signed up for a program. So I went and got the coaching and I got all the paperwork I needed. We had a tentative date sometime in August. I forget exactly when. And all I had to do was go to my doctor so he could okay the operation. And he wouldn't do it because that day my blood pressure was 255 over 115. I was on 2 different blood pressure medications. My heart rate was 120 something, just resting. He said, not only will I not send the surgery, but he was very close to calling 911 and getting me an ambulance right to the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
So I was done. Like, I thought, like, if I couldn't get this surgery, like, what else would I do? And I don't much believe in coincidence, but I turned on the TV. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm sorry. I haven't done this in a while. I'm out of practice. I turned on the TV and I just was thumbing through the channels like I always did. And I saw this film title called Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. And I have no idea why I hit play. And, from there, I just decided I was going to do a 30-day juice fast. By the 5th day of the juice fast, my entire demeanor changed, really. I was getting up out of bed. I was like, just in 5 days, my whole body was changing. I was sleeping through the night. It was amazing. So, we started buying vegetables, which we never did. We always ate out. We always got takeout food. And then from there, the movie Forks Over Knives came up in my news feed or my feed for recommendations next. And I watched that and that film saved my life.
Yeah, exactly. And Heather,
Yep.
now let's go back to when he got the news from the doctor that he would not approve the surgery. And then the transformation from your eyes. What did you see? Tell us about what you experienced during this.
Well, I actually didn't want him to get the surgery. I was very adamant about him getting the surgery, that I did not want him to do it. And, he went ahead and filled all the paperwork out and just was going to do it. And I said, he told me he was going to his doctor. And I said, well, I still didn't want him to do it, but what am I going to do? So I thought, well, I guess if his doctor signs off, then fine. Well, when he came home and told me, he was crushed, but I was actually happy because I didn't want him to have surgery because I didn't think Tim would make it through the surgery. And so that was my whole thing. I was like, isn't there something else? Like, there's got to be something that you can do, So, I went about my business doing stuff and he decided he was going to juice. And I'm like, okay, whatever. I just didn't think he'd stick with that even, I'm like, okay, whatever. So I just, he did that, and he went through it. And then when he decided he couldn't keep juicing, he went into, he watched the Forks Over Knives, and he said, this is what I'm going to do. And I'm like, okay, still not thinking that he would stick with that either. And slowly, over time, we were watching him. He just kept consistent with it. And me and the kids were still eating, bad food. We'd eat pizza and wings, and he'd be eating fries and his salads and whatever it was. And slowly, we started taking his food and tasting it. And I said, well, I guess we don't eat, we don't really need meat. He wasn't eating meat. So I'm like, why buy meat? He's not eating it. I'd have to cook it just for us. My daughter didn't really like it either. So I'm like, well, let's just omit it, So we started just watching what he was doing, and I was just totally amazed. And then to see how he was feeling, and, getting up, getting out, wanting to do things. And I believe at that time you even started, like, you told me you're going to walk to your mother's. And I was like, oh, he's never walking to his mother's. I'm thinking, no, he'll turn around and come back. And he made it to his mom's. I don't even remember how many miles that was.
It was like 1.9 miles, but that was a big deal.
It was great, It was amazing. And we started changing our lives.
And what started you, Heather, to actually following a whole food plant-based diet on your way to losing 90 pounds?
Well, actually, oh, sorry, it's very emotional.
I know, I don't know why.
But it's what we went through. And, watching Tim do everything he was doing, and, slowly transitioning, eating, feeling like me and the kids were eating better, eating a lot better, but still having whatever we'd have, our snacks and things. I actually ended up having a health issue, and my gynecologist told me that I had fibroid and that I needed surgery. And I said, well, is this cancerous? Is it something, can we just watch it and see what happens? I really didn't want to deal with it. And he said, yeah, it's, he felt that it was, not cancerous. And so I ended up actually having an appointment at my primary doctor, and I never said anything to him. And he said, you have a very large fibroid. I'm like, oh, yeah, you're keeping an eye on it. And he said, well, I would like you to have a CAT scan of it, because it could be doing other damage to some of your, it could be doing damage to some of your other organs. And I was kind of like, I feel fine. I just have ache, it's just a little achy every now and then. So I ended up going and having that done. And it came back that it was, I believe, the size of a softball at the time. And I agreed to the surgery, but I gave them stipulations. I said, I will have the surgery if it can be after my daughter's high school graduation and before her high school, and before the graduation party, while they fit me in. And so that night, I went through the surgery. It ended up being the size of a grapefruit now that they told me later on. And that night, it just brought back all the times my mom and everything that she had gone through. She had gone through so much in 3 years.
Right.
And I just said to Tim the next morning, I said, when he came in, I said, that's it. I'm done. I want to do whatever it is, to keep me out of this hospital. And if I can do that, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be whole food plant-based, and I'm not going to look back. And so that was 2015. And here we are 6 years later.
Right, and yours was abrupt, whereas Tim's was gradual.
Yeah, well, it was. I decided that day, and then I still slowly started, changing out. Then I decided, we would go, no salt and no sugar,
Right.
So, and then I had lost a bunch of weight, but then lost another 25 pounds. That, and being active and stuff that. That's where I got the 90 pounds from.
Right. And Tim, you once said that one of the best things that you could have ever done was to start journaling as far as helping you along with your weight loss.
Yeah, which I mean, the plant-based way of eating is way out of character for me, for my culture and how I grew up. Avid hunter, fisherman, grew up on a farm. We raised our own animals. But journaling, I feel like is even more out there for me. To give you an idea, I was just reminded a couple days ago. So when I was juicing, I'm running kale through my juicer as I have a big dip of Copenhagen snuff in my lip. And that's how like messed up this whole thing was. But journaling, I never wrote. I never had an interest in writing. I had probably at the time like eighth grade English until I went back to school. But journaling was so far out there. That's for other people that are weird. But I don't know what I was thinking. I think I asked you, do you have a notebook? And I just wrote down, this is the first day of the rest of your life. And it wasn't anything crazy. I literally kept a little food log, nothing fancy, just jotted down what I ate. And I gave myself a goal, and the first goal, I still have it up the stairs. The first goal was to get up out of a chair 2 times instead of 1. So every time I would stand up in my office, I would stand up, I would sit back down, and I would stand up again. And it sounds ridiculous, but I was doubling my workload. And at 400 pounds, getting up out of a chair is no easy task. But it was so simple. It was, just a little inspirational thing. I would write down a prayer, and I'd write down a couple things that I was thankful for and log a little bit of food. But I think what that did is it made it real. It wasn't just a thought. It wasn't just a dream. It was a thing. And it wasn't much on paper, but it was enough that I'd go to bed that night and say, well, how'd I do? And I would just write a half a sentence, like, did okay, could have done this. And I just, I didn't do that for a long time, but it definitely was a critical part of my journey, really.
And you also said once that this is something that you never finish. And
No.
explain that.
No, well, and even now I'm learning that more. I'm probably more about that now than whenever you heard it, because, first of all, we sometimes in the plant-based world, and I was right on this bandwagon where just eat whole plants, it fixes everything, and you never have to worry about anything. And that's true for a lot of people that are very much overweight and had a really crappy diet. When you take someone like me that was eating fast food 4 times a day, probably 10,000 calories, and you put me on a whole food anything, I'm going to have massive changes. And you can take a lot of weight off doing that. But it doesn't end, because now where I could get away with eating 2 cups of cashews in a day and I would lose weight doing that. Now, if I look at cashews the wrong way, I put 5 pounds on. And so I think there's a lot happening psychologically too. You almost feel invincible. Cause that happened to me. Like I can eat, because of calorie density, I can eat as much as I want. And that is an attitude that we have to stop in our community. Because I hear people bragging about it, and it's not, first of all, it's not healthy. You shouldn't eat as much as you want of anything. You should eat until you feel satiated. And part of the problem is, especially for bigger people that have lost weight, they're big eaters. I am a big eater. And I know I've heard Dr. McDougall say a couple times that you can't overeat on potatoes. I can overeat on potatoes. Trust me, I can overeat. I guarantee you I could eat 15 pounds of potatoes in a day. I have a very big appetite. You don't get to be 400 pounds without a big appetite. And so I think this is personally the best chance you have at becoming healthy and an ideal weight is with a whole food, plant-based lifestyle. But you can overdo it with whole foods. You still have to eat mindful. Like a lot of, like, why I catch myself doing this, an apple is such an innocent thing. And so we kind of have this thing in the plant-based community, like eat 10 apples and post a picture of it, with a sick belly because you ate too much. But the reality is, if you have an apple, a decent apple, like you ate the apple, you enjoyed it, you are satisfied, you don't need 2 more apples.
Right.
Just because you can doesn't mean that you should do it.
Right. And what are some habits that both of you have picked up over the years? Some bad habits that you've gotten rid of and some new ones that you've picked up?
New bad ones or new good ones?
New good ones.
I don't want to take yours. So bad habits, first of all, we're not cooking.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Definitely. Not cooking, bad habits, not being prepared, having, even meal prepping is,
let's go back to the cooking. So God has a sense of humor. So neither one of us cook. We never cooked. And now we cook so much food. Our small batches of rice are 100-pound batches because we have a plant-based restaurant. So we went from not only did we not cook, I should say maybe once a week, but our idea of cooking was some instant rice and a can of Campbell soup and the rice. And that was a very gourmet, scratch-made meal.
Yes.
But we ordered out at least 4 days a week. We went out 1 day a week. And if we cooked at home, they were things like the boxed fried chicken,
or those little pizza things.
The Totino's pizza rolls that lava inside. So the biggest habit, and I do not sugarcoat this, you are not going to be successful with a whole food plant-based lifestyle if you can't figure out how to cook. It doesn't have to be fancy. You are not going to go to restaurants and be successful. You got to learn how to cook. Even if it's just jamming potatoes in an Instapot, turning it on and coming home to it. But if you don't cook, you're not going to be successful. That's just it. So the biggest habit that I think we picked up is cooking.
Right.
And actually, if you give it a chance, you might even like cooking, like really.
Yeah.
Well, most people. Let me tell you, I was never a really good cook, and I follow recipes today to make good things, but I'm still not that great. For me, throw the potatoes in the air fryer. That's me. That's me and my cooking,
She's saying that, but she just cooked almost 500 meals in the last
that's what I
days.
said. I would have to, for the restaurant, to follow recipes. But if it's just me cooking, it's just going to be some vegetables and throw some potatoes in an air fryer.
Yeah.
So another habit that's changed a lot is I don't watch TV at all. I know you still dabble with TV, not as bad, but phone. But see, I have a phone addiction too. But the big thing, the habits has changes. We both of us make a very good point to get outside and get some air. And I haven't been running, but I do ride a little bit. But I've been getting walks in every day. Yep. So we definitely make a habit, and it's not. I don't even like calling it a habit. I'm just grateful to be outside. I think that people don't realize what a privilege it is to be able to take a walk. And you don't understand, and I didn't understand what it's like to have that privilege until it's taken away. And I was faced almost with an amputation not too long ago. Right. And so I really have upped my gratitude game to just go take a walk. Even if I'm limping all the way around our street, I'm very grateful to be out there. So I think that's a big habit, is to get outside, get active, get moved. You don't have to run. You don't have to, pound your knees on a treadmill. You don't have to do any of that stuff, but you need to get out, get a brisk walk. My doctor told me that if people in his waiting room would take a 40-minute brisk walk every day, he'd lose 75% of his patients.
Oh, wow.
Just from that one thing.
Yeah. Well, in closing, what advice do each of you have for someone who has a lot of weight to lose and is open to following a plant-based lifestyle?
I would say, take it one day at a time. When you wake up, make up your mind in the morning that you're going to do this, and you're going to do, you want to take care of your health. And that's the main thing, that when you get up, you're grateful for waking up, and today's your day to make sure you eat healthy and take care of yourself.
Yeah, and this is probably the wrong question for me because I'm putting a course together, so all this is right in my head. Like I got bullet points. So I'll make them super fast. Like I don't want to overwhelm people, but someone that has a lot of weight to lose, the great news is it doesn't matter because it's the same process, whether it's losing 200 pounds, losing 20 pounds, or not losing weight at all, just getting healthy. It's the same process. It's just eat whole plant foods. And the beautiful thing is, if you disconnect yourself from results and connect yourself with the process, then it doesn't matter how much weight you have to lose because all that matters is your next meal. And people get so freaked out about what about this? What about this? What if I go here? What if I go out to eat? What if it doesn't matter. You only worry about your next meal in front of you. And if you just worry about that next meal, it doesn't matter how much weight. It doesn't matter how because you're in it for the long haul because you're only worried about that next step. And people get so overwhelmed with this. The next advice is keep it simple. We tend to want to have 10,000 recipes and arrowroot and all these things. Like we don't need all that. Like just eat whole food. Make it simple. Make it something you enjoy. It doesn't have to be crazy complicated. And it's food. It's okay if it's a little boring because your life will be exciting, right? Yeah. And I could keep going, but those are two big ones to me.
And you have a strong following online, an extremely strong following. You've got a Facebook group, you have a YouTube channel, you have a very popular blog. Tell us the name of all of those.
So it's Fat Man Rants, and if I could go back 10 years or 9 years ago, I don't know if I would have named it that. It's kind of a funny story. It started out as a joke. My family was getting really sick of me talking about food all the time. And so my brother-in-law, like he's a big burly weightlifter, he goes, man, I know what you ate. Could you just get a blog or a page or something? And I had just joined Facebook. And so I'm like, well, what do I call it? Like, well, all you do is rant. And I'm like, okay, we'll call it Fat Man Rants. And I don't know, it's just kind of taken off. And I think it's been fun, and I think the biggest thing, not even like plug in Fat Man Rants and stuff, but the thing is like what we really try to make people understand, we are just normal people. Right. Like there's nothing special. Like if I had self-control, I would have never become addicted to fentanyl, an alcoholic, and 400 pounds. That's not what people with self-control do. If I had willpower, I could have, dieted when I was getting fat, and I would have it's not that. We're just normal people, and I don't pretend that I have it all figured out. We're on this journey, and there's no destination. We just know we keep moving forward. It's constantly tweaking. And so my passion is to just let people know you don't have to be a superstar. Right. We're just normal people. We screw up and we keep going. That's all.
I had a friend say to us one time when we first met her, she was like, oh, that's Tim Kaufman from Fat Man Rants. And she was saying something. I said, we're just Tim and Heather.
Yeah.
That's who we are. We're just Tim and Heather.
But isn't that exciting? Isn't that encouraging, though, that you don't have to have this all figured out? You don't have to, people call me an athlete and stuff. And like, I was never an athlete. I'll probably, we're just people. We're just people. That's all.
Well, Tim and Heather, I am so thankful that you all are here today. And I appreciate your being on the show. And continue to do the things that you are doing, and we're just very, very pleased to have you here.
Well, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much, Sharme.
Anybody,
very nice to meet you.
Yeah, and anybody watching this, feel free to reach out. We help whomever we can.